Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome and World Women Davos Agenda 2024. I'm so happy to see you all. I've seen some faces that are here from early morning, so I'm really appreciated that you spend this day with us and not with competition, for example. And I'm Aleksandra Karasińska, I'm editor-in-chief of Forbes Women Poland, and I'm really proud that I also can be a part of this amazing event. Thank you, Rupa, for inviting me. And now we're going to talk about women and power and how can we get it and how can we use it. And I wouldn't imagine anybody better than to talk about it as Prime Minister Helen Clark, who was three terms, Prime Minister of New Zealand. So let's dive into it. Prime Minister, it's such an honor to have you here with us.
Yeah, great to be back. I remember coming to this room last year and it was just as packed and just as hot. So good afternoon, everybody.
Okay, so quick introduction. Helen Clark was Prime Minister of New Zealand for 3 successive terms from 1999 to 2008. She was the first woman to become a Prime Minister following a general election in New Zealand and the second woman to serve as Prime Minister. And throughout her tenure as a Prime Minister and a Member of Parliament, she really engaged in a wide range of politics, international affairs, economy, environmental, social, cultural topics, but also Helen continues to speak widely and be strong voice of sustainable development and climate action and gender equality and women's leadership, and this is our topic. Prime Minister, you have been a top politician for three terms. So you are a brilliant role model for many women and girls around here. Why it's so important that we have female leaders and women in the positions of power?
The old saying is, no decisions about us without us, right? And, you know, I guess most of us of my age grew up in societies where when you looked at the leaders, they were all male, right? You didn't see yourself there. I'm sometimes asked by younger women, did you ever think when you were our age that you would be Prime Minister? And I would say, of course not. And they'd say, why not? I said, because no one had ever done it in New Zealand. And there were some examples offshore. For example, South Asia has produced a number of women heads of government and state. But interesting, rather different paths from those that we take in the Western democracies. All the women had a family connection. They were the widow of or the daughter of. And amazing women in their own right as well, but that gave them an in. So that wasn't really an applicable route, if you like, in a New Zealand political system. And you could look far afield, and there was Mrs. Thatcher from the late 90s. Well, she wasn't me. I wasn't that kind of political disposition, or didn't really share that outlook. So there weren't many role models to draw on at all. And when I first was elected to the New Zealand Parliament in 1981, there were 92 members of Parliament, and the numbers of women in 1981 doubled from 4 elected the previous time to 8. So we were this pathetic little minority. There were under 9%. And often in my work as head of the UN Development Programme, I would visit countries where we had a supporting women parliamentarians. And they'd say, oh, we're just making such slow progress here. And I'd say, you can't be slower than we were. First country in the world where women gained the right to vote in 1893, not allowed to run for parliament until 1933. And so it went on. Well, run for parliament probably in the late 1920s, but first woman elected in 33. So it's been a long journey, really, of people needing to crash through and take the seats at the table. And I came from a generation of post-World War II baby boomers, We had, we thought the world was our oyster, and why shouldn't we do it? But I won't say it was easy. It was hard because not many had been down that road before.
I wonder when we're listening to you and you say nobody ever do it, and at one hand I see how much world has changed for one generation only, but on the other hand, there's still, we are talking about in Davos, which is a power place. This is where decisions are made very often, and I see after pandemics there is this gender balance index. Global Gender Equality Index. And what we see globally, not in Europe, not in the United States, but we see backlash. Backlash in number of women in the boards. We see fewer women entering workforce. We see a higher gender gap, pay gap, etc., etc. So I quote you somebody who I think is one of my role models, like one woman of power, one of many women of power like you, Hillary Clinton. And she said last year on the conference, we must fight to prevent further erosion of our rights. Some politicians believe that women are second-class citizens and with no autonomy or no rights. We have to take this situation seriously because it's already bad and it can get worse. So, what is, in your opinion, the reasons for that we experiencing this backlash, and also what should we do to prevent the deterioration of women's rights in the future?
Well, Hillary Clinton is speaking from the perspective of a progressive American woman who's seen her country overturn the constitutional right to abortion, which is just so serious. And where those decisions now lie in the US system at the state level, the extent to which politicians are prepared to debate how far they go in banning women's access to the full range of sexual and reproductive health and rights is truly scary. I mean, are you going to end up being criminalized for getting an abortion pill in the mail, for heaven's sake? I mean,
we have it in Poland.
Yeah.
We have it in Poland.
Yeah. I mean, this is hugely concerning. And, who would have thought that something... Usually the American Constitution is very hard to change, right? You establish a right under the Constitution, it kind of gets embedded. But this just went with, the stroke of a couple of new appointments, which made that possible. So, Hillary's right. We have to be on our guard. While we're trying to push forward, we're also trying to stop backsliding.
And is it the reason why we should have more female politicians? Do you think that, they would understand, people like you, understand that having the right to decide about your own body is something natural that men and women should do equally?
Well, let's be honest, not all women agree with this.
Absolutely.
And they can become part of the problem. So the struggle for bodily autonomy will go on. And we need many more women and male allies to stop the backsliding. But you can't count on every woman. One of the judges who voted for the overturn of Roe versus Wade was the relatively recent Trump female appointee. So, unfortunately, those are not the allies in this.
Have you seen the scale of inequality when you reach the prime minister level? Because, a couple of years ago, I interviewed a very clever, very brilliant local government official. She was a mayor of a small town in Poland. And she said, I never thought there is inequality. Actually, my family was very supportive, blah, blah, blah. I became a politician and I became a mayor. And not until then that I saw the budgets and I saw the numbers when I realized that there is huge inequality. For example, in small things, like the whole budget of the year for this city was for the football team. And the football team was male. So each woman in the city that wanted to do some sports, some activities for her health, she has to pay for it. Whereas the guys could do it because the city paid for the trainer and the facility and the field, etc. So did you have this aha moment, like when you entered the building and you saw the budgets and you saw the numbers and you saw the politics from this top position?
Well, what I know is that you can use the positions you have to make a difference in areas like that. For example, long before I was Prime Minister of New Zealand, I was Minister of Health. And I was able to do some very interesting things. For example, there had been a scandal at the National Women's Hospital where a gynecologist did not believe that a negative cervical smear was necessarily a sign of something that would progress to cervical cancer. So women were called back and back and back for smears, and they got more and more serious, and eventually they died of stage 4 cervical cancer. This was a scandal. And so a judge was appointed to investigate what had happened. And one of her recommendations was set up a national cervical screening program free of charge for women, which I did as the Minister of Health.
Bravo.
You just grab that recommendation and you run with it. I also, this is 1989-90 period, set up the first pilot for breast screening in New Zealand, which became a nationwide free scheme for women. Another issue was the issue of midwifery. And I became persuaded that midwifery should become an autonomous profession. I believe that the trained midwife knows what she's doing, and she should be able to practice to her full level of autonomy. And so I brought in an amendment to the Nurses Act, which enabled midwives to practice autonomously to the level of competence as set out by their professional college, and to have dedicated training. So there are a whole lot of issues like this that you could pick up. When I was Prime Minister, reading widely as one does, I saw that the HPV vaccines were becoming available. Now, because we had this background in New Zealand with the cervical cancer screening, I was on to this. I said, our girls have got to have this fast, girls and boys actually. And we were one of the early introducers of those vaccines. So you can just go through so many areas of policy where if you're in a position of power as a woman at that table, you can do some stuff. You can really make a difference, whether it's in health or education or workforce legislation, etc.
What would you say? That we are unfortunately we have to end very soon. One question, our last question, and very short answer. If you speak to young women now who are thinking about their future, they might consider going to politics, what would you say to them?
Well, I'd say do it. And I say do it even knowing how tough it can be. And look, the misogynist elements who troll and throw hatred at women politicians, they've always been there. The problem is now they have basically gangland social media space to do what they like. I regularly put in reports to Twitter about people who call me the most terrible things on tweets. Almost never get a complaint upheld. Now, of course, you can block these people, but I think a lot of younger women are looking at the hatred that's out there and is being purveyed through these channels. I think, oh, is this for me? This might just be too rough. But we'll never change society for the better for women unless we roll up our sleeves and get in there. And no woman should stand alone in this. You need networks. You need networks of women and men. You need your family and your friends with you. You need your movement with you, because if you try to stand alone, you won't have the resilience to deal with all the knocks. And there are a lot of knocks, believe me. I say I have so many darts in my back, there's no room for any more. So, but keep them coming, they'll be...
Prime Minister, thank you so much. This is what we're doing here. Rupa, thank you for networking, for creating a movement. Helen Clark, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.